They try to influence you to believe the way they want you to believe, but the scriptures has been tampered with, especially the new covenant. Okay, because I mean, it seems like they come out with a new translation every day. Okay, but the old covenant, that was written in Hebrew, and so they said we wasn't writing back then. See, this is the Gentiles are saying this, that African people wasn't writing. Well, who wrote this? Who wrote the Hebrew Bible? The African people wrote that Bible. There were civilizations. We've been taught that we had no history, no civilization. Well, who wrote the Hebrew Bible? Who built the Tower of Babel? Civilizations. The Nile rivers, the Ethiopians, Cush, all these things is the Bible talks about, the Holy Scriptures talk about. Okay, so we're talking about the time of the Gentiles. They had their time. Their time is coming to an end, and there's not much they can do about it. They're doing everything has been put in place. Everything has been arranged. You see, 100 years ago, if they had a problem in Niger, they would have came in here and did something about it. But see, now it's kind of like, oh, they can't come in because, see, we're watching. You got the cameras on them, So it's time. That's why we have YouTube and electricity. We're using all these things because their time is coming to an end. Now, I did listen. I did hear that Gabon. I think they turned the Wi-Fi off during the election or after the election. They were trying to hide something, so they just turned the power off for a while. I mean, you got, and they're going to start doing things like that. Because they want to get some things done. They got to protect their interests. So, Gabon, some European country, the Gentile nation probably encouraged them to do that. Now, this is what you guys need to do. You need to just turn the Wi-Fi off, turn the internet off in your country for a while, because we don't want them to know what you're doing. So, and we're going to see more of that in Gentile nations, because they're going to need to do something. They don't want everybody to know what they're doing. Like I was saying, about 100 years ago, they would have came in here and did all kind of stuff, in Niger. But they don't want you to know that they're doing it, so they'll try to get your brother to do their work for them. Especially like, for instance, that the pipeline is important to Europe. Now, I know who destroyed the pipeline going from Russia to Europe, so they need this pipeline. This pipeline is very important. They need to get this thing going before winter. Okay, so it's very important that if it was like 100 years ago, they would have had it going up already. But you see, they're trying to hide what they do, and if you read their history, how do you know what they do? Because you read their history. That's why they don't want you to know history. That's why they didn't teach us to read. It was against the law to teach Africans in the U.S. To read for hundreds of years. It was against the law to teach us because they didn't want us to know. They want us walking in darkness. They wanted us to sleep. Well, we're not asleep anymore. We're not asleep anymore. So, so they would go in and just do it. But like, for instance, the U.S. have election coming up next year. So our president is concerned. President Biden is concerned about, well, he got to be careful what he do in Africa. He might get his vice president to go in and talk to somebody, because he don't want us to see what he's doing. But we got to have our eyes on him. Don't even think about no White House if you mess with our peoples in Africa. Don't even think about it. You're already trying to get them to do some things and putting sanctions on them, which you should not be putting. The U.S. don't have no business putting sanctions on African nations and African peoples around the world. No business. So we're watching, and because the election is coming up, Biden don't want to do too much in Africa. He knows if he go into Niger, there's going to be some trouble with the brothers in the U.S., the sisters in the U.S. He's not going to get elected again. So, because white supremacy work together around the world. It's the same way around the world. It's no different. I don't care where you're at. It works the same way. White supremacy works the same way in Africa that it does in the U.S. White supremacy works the same way in South Africa like it does. It works the same way in the U.S. It doesn't change. It works the same way. If you go into South Africa, you go into Niger, you go into Ghana, you go into the U.S., you go into South America, it works the same way all over the world. In Australia, it works the same way. Our peoples in Australia they weren't even counted as a human. All the way up into the 60s and 70s. And still not in Australia today. They really got treated bad there because they were so far away. I mean, I can imagine, I know what they went through, but I'm not going to get into all of that. Okay? So we're talking about the times of the Gentiles is coming to an end. Okay, let me read some of these nations here because my time is running out. I already got shut down once on this phone, on my cell phone here. Greeks, Romans, I already read all that, right? Okay, so we come down to France, the Dutch, the British. It was all over the world. The British, well, they hasn't changed. A spirit doesn't change. It's a spirit that's influencing them, and the spirit doesn't change. I don't care how much they talk about democracy, it doesn't change. They're still going to mistreat you. They can talk about democracy until the cows come home. They don't change. They're the same way. The British, the Dutch, and the USA. Now, see, the USA is simply, I think of them as part of the British Empire. Same people. They're the same people. They do the same thing. Same thing the British did. They all do the same thing. France, Germany, they all do the same thing. White supremacy. That's what we're dealing with here. Freedom from white supremacy. That's what we're talking about. That's who is mistreating us. They're ruling the world right now. They're ruling the planet right now for about the last 500 years or so. They're ruling the planet. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. But their time is coming to an end, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's a time for all things, and their time is coming to an end. They enslaved the almighty peoples all over this world. They're mistreating his peoples all over this world. And they set up peoples over there in Israel and saying that these are the Hebrew peoples, the Hebrew Israelite. They mistreated God's people. Well, you know, if the British and the U.S. put peoples over there in Israel, they wasn't doing God's will. They can't even hear from God. If you're fighting over and taking God's people resources out of Africa, God is not going to tell you to go set up no peoples in no Israel. In Palestine. Not the Hebrew God. Maybe the God that they're serving, the so-called white Jesus. That's the one that they're serving. They whitewash everything. And if you don't believe that the Bible is written by black people, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of stuff. You're just simply blind if you don't believe. If you're walking in color blindness, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of truth. The Bible says you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Okay, so this is talking about, and you remember the Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885. How the colonial powers, we also call them colonial powers, how they went about dividing Africa. And that's what this is all about in Niger and Gabon right now. France still have their portion. They ain't never gave it up. They ain't never give it up. They ain't gonna give it up until it's time. But that don't mean that we shouldn't resist and stand together. Because we are free people. We was born free. We never meant to be enslaved. It never meant for us to be enslaved. We was born free. So we have to stand together. I don't care what religion you are. All the people's got to stand against white supremacy. I don't care if you live in China. China got to stand against them. India, you need to stand against them because they enslaved you. They colonized India. They colonized China. They colonized all of us. We all have to stand together. Don't fight against one another. Don't let them divide us. We have to stand together because that's what we are resisting, white supremacy. Somebody said, no, it's something else. No, it's nothing else. It's white supremacy. The Gentiles. Their time is almost up. Things is changing. Things is changing. Things that has been like this for about 500 years or so. Now it's changing. And the French president, he knows it. He knows it. He might as well throw his hands up and just get on up out of Africa because things is changing. Just get on up out of Africa because things is changing. Things is changing. You've been ruling by the gun. You've been ruling by the nuclear weapons. Okay, but it's all over now. Things is changing. Well, family, I love you. We got to go.